when I was a young man, in high school and university and so on, I met a wide variety of very interesting and widely experienced people. And for a time, I became rather unhappy with my own life in Alberta, where I was growing up. And so I decided to take some time off and travel. And I went to the United States, to Denver, Colorado. And I picked it because New York was too big and scary, and Los Angeles was too big and scary. And I thought, nothing place, you know, and in a lot of ways, Colorado is very like Alberta. There were lots of agriculture and mountains and, you know, all that stuff. So I went to Denver and I met, at first I didn't do very much. And then I got a job at a health food store. And of course I met some very interesting clients, people there. And I learned a lot about nutrition. And I learned about, one of the things I learned about was the fact that some of my discomfort and unhappiness when I was in Alberta was because I was almost malnourished. I was not eating the stuff you should eat if you want to keep yourself healthy. Anyway, so I had a lot of adventures, some of them secondhand, some of them firsthand. Stories told to me by others who lived in the region and so on. And I realized after I left Colorado and came back to Canada several years later that there were a whole bunch of stories there. And so I thought, when I'd finished Inca Sunset, I was casting around for something to write. And I thought, you know, we could create kind of an adventure about this book, about a young man who goes to the US to find himself, if you like. And if you were to assume that it was autobiography, you would be doing my imagination a real disservice. Because a lot of it is invented. But some of the people in the book are, you know, people I knew, and yeah. And the insight into the jobs, in particular, the health food store job and the taxi driving, a lot of those are based on my own experience, because I was a taxi driver and I knew a lot of the guys and the problems they would run into and so forth. And I also had a very strong interest in psychology at the time, and I read an enormous amount of material on psychology. And when I went to Boulder, Colorado, for example, which is only about 25 miles away from Denver, and there's a big university there, and it's kind of like an intellectual Disneyland. There's so much going on in that area that I had to experience it and do things and meet people, and it was just really quite fun. So because they were all sort of separate little stories, there's something called a picaresque novel, and what the structure of such a novel is really a bunch of independent episodes almost that take place through time. It's not like one long story, but rather a whole bunch of little stories, and yet they are tenuously connected by the same character. Now, who would the ideal reader be? Probably somebody nearly my age. But there are some universal things about it. I mean, I don't know how old you young people are. You're probably in your mid-20s. I think it's a rather universal experience for young people to get out into the world, face down interesting and difficult new situations that they have to cope with, and through coping with them, they learn who they are. Who we are really is the sum of our stories. You know, somebody meets you and you get talking about yourselves to each other, and you ask each other questions and so forth. And before you know it, you've told the other person a bunch of stories about yourself. And that's who you are.